Okay, I have the game Oware here, and I'm going to relate it to some of our junior intermediate math curriculum in Ontario. And what I'm going to do that is talk about the original game, and then really to get it up to the intermediate level, we're going to do like some side calculations, change some of the rules of the game, some of the point scoring, so it becomes a little more challenging for those students. Because otherwise, this is really accounting, a bit of addition, maybe a tiny bit of subtraction in the game. So I'm assuming you're aware of the rules of the game. We have kind of a coordinate grid here, which is one of the first ways to relate it in our junior years. I'm going to call this row A, row B, and then we have 6 columns across the top. So that really helps us when we're talking about where we are. So we can have students like start to actually write down what's happening in the game. And I'm drawing from B5, and I did a -4 into that pit, or subtracted by 4, and then +1, +1, +1, +1. What happens? Well, each of those, because we started the game the original way it started, each of those end up at 5. So we have lots of moves in the game as it goes through. But let's say we're going to start it, and I'm going to change some of the rules of the game. What I'm going to say is we start with the game at 0 points, and we'll start with the same old scoring system where you have to get 2 or 3 into a pit to get a point. But for every turn you don't score, we can start some multiplication and division into the game, okay? And you might need to calculate this on the side because it becomes very difficult to keep score in your head. But we'll say for every turn that you don't score, you divide by the number of consecutive turns you don't score. That's one of the modifications. You can do different ones. What do I mean by that? Well, in this turn, I'm going to pick up from this pocket, right? And I'm not going to score on this turn. So this is the first turn I don't score by. So I'm going to divide my score by 1. Luckily, that does nothing. So think of it like you don't really get penalized. And because my score is 0, 0 divided by 1 is 0. So when we start the game, really no different calculations. It's once we start to score in the game that things change. So my opponents got 0. That's the first consecutive move they didn't score. 0 divided by 1, we both have 0. So I'm going to go 0 divided by 2, still 0. Whoopsie. So we get around the game a little. I really thought this through a little so that we end up scoring in a bit. Close to it. I'm going to make... Oh, shoot. Let's modify a little, right? So let's say we get to a point where we're here. I pick up, consecutive moves in a row. But, oh, look at this. I finally scored. Great. How do I bring in multiplication? Well, let's go back and talk about... We could also get your points in the game to multiply by the number of beads you picked up on that scoring turn. So this is going to be my first attempt at scoring, right? So my score is 0 at this point. I actually have 5 beads in my hand, okay? So you actually have to go back sometimes. You won't even realize you scored. Oh, how many did I have? So 3, 4, 5. Well, I got 2 points, and I dropped 5 beads. 2 times 5, 10. That's real easy. Got the 2 beads on the side. I actually have 10. So I have to keep score of that because the number of beads will no longer tell us our final score. So on a piece of paper on the side, I'm going to write down, I did, took out 5. So I took out 5, got 2 beads, ended up with 10. Wonderful. My opponent goes, let's say they're still at 0, nothing happens for them. Let's see, are they going to score in this turn? Yeah, whatever. Could be the 10th turn, 0 divided by 10, nothing happens. But now we're where I am. I have 10. Well, here's the first turn where I didn't score, 10 divided by 1. That's still 10, no big deal. Opponent goes. Okay, now this is my second turn. Well, 10 divided by 2, 5. So now I start getting to a point where I need to continue to score to keep that score up. Those are simple. Those are like natural numbers we're working with. I'm going to say my opponent goes again. But now I'm getting in trouble because this is about to be my third time around. Unless I'm about to score here. No, I'm not. Oh, well, I had 5. That was my third consecutive turn. 5 divided by 3. And this is where we start getting into our more difficult math, right? So this is great. We can leave it as a fraction. We can have 5 over 3 and then continue to divide fractions if we want, and we do that on the side. Or we can actually put it into decimal form and start figuring our score. And eventually scores are going to get to, like 1.233 to like 2.059. We're going to get really difficult. And because of the way the curriculum is, we can get them around to the tenths, hundredths, thousandths column, depending on what we're trying to meet in our junior and intermediate years. So that's one way you can modify the game. You can change the rules of the game so we can go either clockwise or counterclockwise. And you can see the changing in the scoring. There'll be a lot more strategy to it, but also allow for a lot more multiplication and division throughout the game. You could actually completely get rid of that consecutive division rule, and you could say, for no matter what it is on my turn, however beads I pick up, I either multiply or divide by those. That might be a simpler rule to remember, less bookkeeping on how long you haven't scored. So for instance, I have 5 beads here. Say my score is 0. Well, I divide by 5 on that turn. Well, on this one, I only divide by 1 because I moved 1 bead. Here, picked up 3 beads. I divide my score by 3. Excuse me. When I finally score, okay, say we're here. Well, I use 6. 6 times 2, 4. 6 times 4, 24 points on that move. That's a big move for us. So we've got quite a bit there. So again, just modifying the game for multiplication and division. Again, don't forget there's also integers. We're adding and subtracting in each of these. This is a coordinate grid. Multiply your score by beads. I'm trying to have a little notes on all the things I wrote down. I think that's it. You can make tons of modifications to really get this game to adapt to primary. At its basis, it's really nice to meet a lot of the curriculum within the primary grades. But your junior grades, not bad. We're talking about coordinates, we're talking about integers when we get into intermediate. And then we start doing multiplication and division of fractions, whole numbers, decimals. You could do the rounding part. Like we can even have that division rule in the junior years. But instead of actually getting into decimals, let's say we score. I'm going to pretend I do a little better here than I am. Pick up a couple extra. Hey, I go here. I scored, right? I got 2 on this hand. Now I go, oh shoot, 2 divided by 1. Well, that's still 2. Let's say I have another turn. I divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. That's nice. And this one is a huge one here. You could do something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, I didn't score. Well, now I got like 1 divided by 8. So I can either round back to 1. We can talk about, instead of going to those decimals, we're just going to round to the nearest whole number. So we can do a lot of rounding there. Or you can really change the rules of this game and maybe whatever the remainder is, my score now multiplies by or divides by or becomes. And that changes a lot of strategy of the game. I might want to get a weird, like 1 divided by 8. Hey, turns out I got a 0 remainder 8. Oh, my score is now 8. Like I just tactically multiplied my score by 8. Okay, so you can really change the rules to deal with a lot more intricate calculating when we talk about rounding, division, multiplication, remainders, decimals, fractions. All those things can be pulled in by just modifying a couple of rules of the Oware game. If that didn't make sense, that last remainder rule or division rules or the multiplication rules, contact me and I'll try to help explain it. But you can come up with your own, and very quickly this turns into meeting in a game fashion, so game-based learning, which hopefully if there's interest already, there's the motivation to it, but all the calculating of score changes our strategy and helps us meet a lot of that upper year curriculum.